Welcome to Inside Sim Racing's special edition all about CXC simulations. I'm Christy Rankes with Sean Cole. So Sean has been all over town lately. He was in Dallas, most recently he's in LA, so we're going to talk about that today. Sean, you were there for the open house in their new facility. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was actually a really good opportunity. CXC, we've covered them all throughout the history of our show, and they've really grown to a new level, and they're having an open house in order to sort of show off, I think, a little bit, in a good way. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, they have a new facility, they put a lot of time and energy in it, and they want to let their friends, family, and clientele know about it.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that we've talked about before is that you and Darren actually worked there before. So I guess, you know, has this been a long time coming? What kind of brought you down there?
Darren and I both did work at CXC way back when we started the show, and so we have a good friendship with Chris, and we've kind of followed the CXC story for many years. So it's been a long time coming, sure.
So before you actually went to CXC, you actually spent a day before hanging out in Los Angeles. Did you do anything special, or did you go down there specifically to like play with the rigs?
Great question. I was there a day early, and I knew at the party. Well, no, you'd think that's what I would go do. No, my version of party though is getting to play with Sims. So I went to CXC the day before, knowing that nobody else would be there. Well, their staff would be there. It would give me an opportunity to really play with the Sim, which, you know, years ago I built them. So I wanted to see how they've evolved, and I wanted to get to play with it in more of my own controlled environment.
So were the Sims that you played with similar to the ones that you built when you worked there?
We originally built the Motion Pro simulator. It's evolved to the Motion Pro 2, and it's had a ton of upgrades throughout it. Now, looking at it from afar, it's very similar from appearance, but there are some subtle differences and some very obvious differences that make it quite a bit more evolved.
What about some of the differences, I guess, specifically? How do they differ in terms of timing? Like, how have they evolved over the last couple of years?
The biggest thing is they've changed out their wheel. So when we were building them, they actually used a Frex wheel, which at the time was state-of-the-art, but maybe not as nice as what they're using now, which is the ECCI force feedback wheel, which is incredible. They're still using the Canon pedals, but then they've made some other evolutions to the Sim. They have like these seatbelt tensioners. They've really upgraded the way the motion part works to it, and just other refinements that make it look a little more cleaned. It's just gone through more generations, and it's more polished and just looks a little more fancy, I think.
Right, so in a way, kind of like how all of technology has continually evolved over the last couple of years.
In this case, it didn't get smaller though, like a cell phone or something.
Right, interesting. Well, let's take a look at some of the things that Sean played. They're tons of fun. Take a look at those screens and take a look at those rigs. They're out of this world. Sean, let's be honest, this vacation was all play, no work for you.
Oh, come on, you didn't see the sweat pouring off my head? I was working extremely hard.
Please, buddy, please. So we talked about the Motion Pro 2. Talk to me about the Indy car that was there. It's not typically something that CXC does, so why was it there? Tell me about that car, that's interesting.
This is something that they were commissioned to do. This is, like you said, it was a one-of-a-kind thing. It had no motion, so right off the bat, anybody who watched that other video, it had no motion, but it was a real unique challenge because that was a real Champcar. I mean, that's a carbon fiber car, and it's a real car, and the goal was to get the computer and the wheel and all the components into it without harming the car. So that car could actually be stripped down and turned back into a race car again. Whereas anytime I've seen anybody do anything like this, they really end up destroying the car in the process. So it's really nice the way they did it. It accomplished amazing things.
So wait, there was no motion in that car? CXC is known for their motion.
Yeah, and that's kind of the trippy thing, because yeah, that's what they do. They are known. but they're also known for guys who can really get this kind of job done, and it was a local job. It was for actually a Toyota dealership in North Hollywood. So it was local, and it kind of worked through connections, and I don't know, they should be known for this because they did an amazing job with that car.
Well, if you take a look at the comments in that YouTube video, you'll see that everybody talks about how perfect the field of view was. So I guess maybe we should talk a little bit about that.
That field of view was amazing, and I mean, we all spend a lot of time working on our own field of view, but the way they had got the screens, first of all, they are like bezel-less screens, so there's like no anything to look past.
Yeah, and I remember when you showed it to me how the tire was completely aligned with the screens. It was just like, I mean, you were driving a real car.
Yeah, it went from the on-screen tire into the physical tire. It was perfect. The way they actually had to make a special cowl to let the screens drop low without harming the car. And that way it got it so that the dashboard covered the on-screen dashboard, like 1-to-1. I don't know if anybody remembers, we did that one video where the guy had the rig in the cloth with the projector and it looked like he was in the car. This felt like you were in the car, just like that.
Well, speaking of that, you know, you build rigs pretty often and you definitely race in them a lot. So I guess what are really the differences between something this high-end and something that you normally race in?
Well, just being in a real car. I mean, the way you step in is just like a real open-wheel driver would step into the car. You know, and you're down there and it's tight, your feet are in an elevated position, your steering wheel is there, and it's just that environment. And also the way the audio worked with that tub, it kind of had this like resilience, and it kind of, you could feel, and then they had some kind of shaker devices in it as well. You could feel all that so well being transmitted through the car. And then when you combine it with the visuals, it sold the whole feeling. It was just a little more intense than being in just a static rig. Well, and that was static, but the whole thing made you feel like it was motion, even though it wasn't.
So we've talked about the Motion Pro, we've talked about the Champcar. If I wanted to buy one tomorrow, how much would I have to, you know, what would I have to pay for one of these?
Are you talking Motion Pro or are you talking the Champcar for
Tell me both.
Well, in a nutshell, the Champcar version, that's a custom job. So you'd have to contact CXC, they'd build it for you, bring them a Champcar, they could do it. On the Motion Pro, it's a little more simple. I think their bottom of the line one starts out at about $35,000. That's everything motion-wise in a single screen. And then I think their incredible one with a flight sim version and 3 screens in the works is like $70,000, but that's like throwing in every wheel modification they make and just pretty obscene. But and then anywhere in between, because they are kind of custom jobs.
I think that's a little bit out of my price range for now. So you definitely had a lot of fun the day before, but you were really there for the open house. So when we come back from this commercial, we'll go ahead and take a look at that and your interview with Tommy Kendall. Keep watching. Welcome back to Inside Sim Racing Special Edition, all about CXC simulations. I'm Christy Rankes, this is Sean Cole. So I guess let's get to the open house part. That was part of why you went down there in the first place.
It was the main point.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the open house is really cool. I mean, again, they moved to a new facility. They had a different employee or staff member at different sims throughout the party. So people would come in, anybody sat down, they were gonna get instruction from a CXC guy. They had people at like their design area where they have like their new 3D printer where they made me this little cool logo thing. But they had somebody there so they'd explain the whole process with their research and development. It was really cool. I mean, again, they put on a really nice party. There was catered food, there was an open bar, which I didn't take part in. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it really did show where they've come. And I think back to when Darren and I used to work there, and we literally did build sims in a shed. And now they're in this beautiful facility near some aerospace companies, and
yeah,
very cool.
Well, talking about that facility, I mean, so that's quite a difference from a shed to 11,000 square feet. That's incredibly intense.
Yeah, not even a leaky roof or anything.
So one of the things you got to do when you were there was you got to talk to Chris Considine, who's the founder and CEO of CXC, and you also got to talk to Tom Haake. What was it like hanging out with them?
It was very cool, and that shows how intertwined our show and CXC have been over the years, because Tom Haake used to be on the show.
Right.
So it was great getting to talk to both of them. It was great getting to talk to Chris with this time gone by too, because he has really gone through a huge growth. So it was nice getting to talk to him and see the differences between old Chris, old CXC, new Chris, new CXC. Let's start with the sim. That's the bread and butter here. How has it evolved since we last covered it 4 or 5 years ago? I mean, it might be more than you can explain real shortly.
Yeah, well, yeah, the devil's in the details. Well, we designed the Motion Pro 2 from the very beginning to be a modular product. So we wanted our customers to have a product that they could invest in and not have to completely replace every time a new piece of technology came out. So because of that, we're still using the same core ideas, and we've just evolved along that line.
So you are now with CXC Simulations?
True.
How long have you been here?
Almost a year now.
And what is your job title here?
I'm head of development.
Head of development. What does that have you doing?
Developing all kinds of things. So everything from developing new products and new techniques to make the sim feel more realistic or more fun in any particular way, to integrating new parts.
So you've seen some footage from the interview with Chris and Tom, but if you want to check out the whole interview, you can check out the link on our description. It was a little bit too long for this show, but they had a lot to say. And speaking of interviews, you also got to interview Tommy Kendall, which is, you're a huge fan of him, so I guess tell me about that.
This was a big honor and a great opportunity, because Tommy Kendall has kind of been around the sim racing community a lot, so I figured he'd have a lot to say about sim racing, and since he's a long-time real-life racer, I really wanted his take on things, and so it was a great privilege to get to talk to him. You seem to be getting sucked into sim racing more and more over the years.
Well, it's, I love all facets of it, and I was fortunate enough, I was the host, or one of the judges actually, I guess, of GT Academy, first season of the US GT Academy.
So that's pretty much going to wrap up our special on CXC. Sean, anything else before we go?
I just want to thank Chris Considine for having the open house. Actually, he brought me down there so we could cover it, and thank him for taking good care of me. And thanks Tom Haake and Tommy Kendall for the interviews. And other than that, just had a really good time.
Yeah, you glad to be back in Spokane? Where are you going next?
I think I'm going to Tahiti next, and Darren's going to cover our next out-of-town event.
Okay, well, thanks for watching Inside Sim Racing. I'm Christy Rangies. Sean Cole. Keep watching.
$114,009.
What's that?
I'm slower than Sean Cole at the moment. It's not a good thing.